Hello, this is Harry Doble. What you are listening to is part of a series where I read from the book The Lotus Sutra and make some personal commentaries. Chapter 1, Introduction. The introduction takes the form of a story. It starts with "Thus I have heard," suggesting a narrator recounting a myth. The Buddha was staying in the city of Rajagriha, now modern-day Rajgir, the ancient hill-fortified capital of the Magadha kingdom in ancient India. The city sits on the mountain of Gridhrakuta, known today as Vulture Peak. The Buddha was with an assembly of 12,000 arhats, monks who had achieved the highest level of attainment. They were, quote, free from the confusion of desire, had achieved their own goals, shattered the bonds of existence, and attained complete mental discipline. Unquote. A list of 21 specific names are given. These include some of the most famous of the Buddha's followers, such as Nanda, Subhuti, and Ananda. Rahula, the Buddha's son, and Rahula's mother, Yasodhara, are also in attendance. In attendance were also 80,000 bodhisattva mahasattvas. A mahasattva is someone who has practiced Buddhism for a long time and has reached a very high level on the path to awakening. The grammar is a little odd in this section. A confusing sentence states of the mahasattvas, quote, all were irreversible from highest complete enlightenment, unquote. To my understanding, this is a translation issue. To be irreversible from means that the mahasattvas have reached a high enough state of progress it is irreversible, avaivatika, a term which means they can no longer backslide in their progress. In this state of progress, the highest level of attainment is inevitable. For the highest level of attainment, the term Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi is used, which means supreme perfect enlightenment. The Mahasattvas' achievements are listed. Quote, they had obtained the Dharanis, were established in eloquence, and had turned the irreversible wheel of the Dharma. Each had paid homage to countless hundreds of thousands of Buddhas, planted roots of merit in their presence, and had always been praised by those Buddhas. They had also cultivated compassion within themselves, skillfully caused others to enter the wisdom of a Buddha, obtained great wisdom, and reached the other shore. All of them were famous throughout countless worlds and had saved innumerable hundreds of thousands of sentient beings. Unquote. A list of 18 specific names are given. These include some of the most revered bodhisattvas, such as Avalokiteshvara, Manjusri, and Maitreya. So to recap, the Buddha is at a gathering where there are two groups of monks in attendance, 12,000 arhats and 80,000 bodhisattva mahasattvas. These are two very distinct groups of Buddhists, both of whom utilize different words, traditions, and practices, and have different ways of understanding enlightenment. The Lotus Sutra concerns itself with a historical schism in Buddhism. The Arhats are Theravada Buddhists, the older and most traditional form of Buddhism. The Arhats follow the Arhat or Arahant path, which teaches liberation from personal suffering. The Mahasattvas are Mahayana Buddhists, who follow the Bodhisattva path, which teaches not only the liberation of personal suffering, but also the liberation from suffering for all living beings. There are other differences, but what is important to know is that the Lotus Sutra was written at a time when there was a schism in Buddhism between Theravada and Mahayana, and the differences seem to be irreconcilable. The subject of the Lotus Sutra, then, is the internal politics and spiritual crisis of the Buddhist community during this period of deep fragmentation. There is a list of other attendants, It mentions several kings who are celestial beings. Shakra, king of the Devas, is present, as are the 8 Naga kings. There are also the 4 kings of the Kinyaras, the 4 kings of the Gandharvas, the 4 kings of the Asuras, the 4 kings of the Garudas, and many attendants. Each of these kings represent the Ashtasena, the 8 legions, a group of Buddhist demigods whose function it is to protect the Dharma. Notably, one real king is mentioned, King Ajatashatru. Ajatashatru was an ancient king who lived a few hundred years before the Lotus Sutra was written. Ajatashatru's presence is notable because he imprisoned his father, King Bimbisara, and starved him to death. King Bimbisara was one of the closest friends of the Buddha. Bimbisara gifted the Buddha the Veluyavana, bamboo grove, the site of the first monastery in Buddhist history. The Buddha is sitting in front of the man who murdered his dearest friend and greatest patron. Ajatashatru even conspired with the Buddha's cousin Devadatta to assassinate the Buddha. In the Sumanyapala Sutta, Ajatashatru converts to Buddhism. He has become a symbol of repentance within the religion. Ajatashatru's presence is an act of grace by the Buddha. The Buddha is referred to in the next passage as the Bhagavat. The Buddha is surrounded, paid homage to, honoured and praised by the assembly. He recites the Mahayana Sutra called Immeasurable Meanings to the Bodhisattvas. The Buddha then enters a state of deep meditation, a samadhi called the Abode of Immeasurable Meanings. After this, great Mandarava and Manjusaka flowers fall from the sky, scattering upon the assembly, and the whole Buddha world quaked in 6 ways. What happens next is important. Quote, "At that time, the whole assembly of such humans and non-humans as monks, nuns, laymen and laywomen, the Devas, Nagas, Yaksas, Gandharvas, Asuras, Garudas, Kinyaras, Maharagas, kings, and noble emperors, having experienced something unprecedented, were filled with joy, their palms pressed together, they gazed attentively at the Buddha. Then the Buddha emitted a ray of light from the tuft of white hair between his eyebrows. It illuminated all the 18,000 worlds in the east, down as far as the lowest hell, Avicii, and up as high as the Akanishva heaven. All the sentient beings in those worlds, living in the 6 transmigratory states, became visible from this world." Unquote. What happens next is that a vision reaches everyone in the assembly. In this vision, every Buddha and teacher and follower of the Dharma that ever lived or has died could be seen. This is a moment of time collapse, showing what appears to be the entire history of Buddhism up to this point, and the lived experience of every Buddha and Buddhist who has ever lived. The reaction to this vision and the Buddha's explanation of it will be explored further in the next video.